Now we're going to take a look at structuring our page. This is very important because often on a page there are many elements that we have, and we sometimes need to divide those up into a structured order. So for example, this whole thing that we're seeing on our page here could very well be an article of some sort. So we may want to wrap the whole thing in what we call a div. A div is a subdivision of the page. So we're dividing the page up into smaller parts. In this case, this might be a recipe, and we might have several recipes like this on the page. So therefore, structuring each one with its own block around it might be useful. If we look at the top here, we may think to ourselves, well, actually, this area here happens to be a header. So when we do that, we now have structure that these two elements are together inside this div. Very quickly you can end up with lots of divs on the page, and it can often become very difficult to know exactly what section is what. So inside here, maybe this div is going to have the navigation in there. So what we often do is allocate a specific name to each of these things, and we can do that a number of different ways. If something appears only once on the page, it's unique, therefore it can have an ID. Now later on, when you start using something like JavaScript, sometimes you need to have a unique ID in order to target something specifically. So that's when you might use that. Here you might put a unique ID on the page that says, hey, this particular thing that we're looking at is seafood pasta. Notice there are no spaces in there. Between seafood and pasta, we don't put spaces in. Instead, you see a capital P for pasta. That's known as camel case, and it just enables you to read the two words quite easily together. It's called camel case because it's a bit like having a hump in the middle. And then when we come to something called CSS later on, we need to talk to that thing to make it designed a specific way. So we use a hash in front of it, which we'll come on to in a little while. Now the next thing that we might have on the screen is something called a class. Now a class is when we want the same thing to appear many times. So maybe there are like multiple recipes on the page, and we might call those an article. So we might have div class equals article. Each article we would want to look exactly the same because we would want consistency on our page. Therefore we would put them like that. To talk to them in CSS, we use dot article at the front of it. And of course we can talk just to tags as well. And if we want to talk to tags, all we need to do in CSS is target that tag. So here, if we wanted to target the A of the link, we would just put A in our CSS and then the brackets to then put in the content there. So we'll come on to the CSS in a little while. Let's take a look at how we write those things in our code. So in here, we would say class equals article, because there could be a lot of these, or you might even want to describe it better than that and say recipes, because there may be more of them. This section here, you may want to say class equals header, because it's the header section, it's got the heading and it's got an image. We may also want to say at this point ID equals seafood pasta, because we've then got a unique ID that says that this is a different recipe to the others. And then down here we might want to say navigation. Now on their own they won't make the page look any different, but in our next video we're going to take a look at using CSS to therefore put some structure around those and make them appear in a slightly different way.